What is up, brothers and sisters? It's Jay Campbell, and you're listening to the Jay Campbell Podcast. Join me for regular deep dives with amazing beings whose work is manifesting a golden age. And remember, you create your reality by your focused thoughts, conscious words, and intentional actions. Raise your vibration to optimize your love creation. Hey guys, what is going on? It's Jay Campbell, and this is a new podcast for the Jay Campbell Podcast. The TOT Revolution Podcast is no more, and I'm very excited today to be joined in studio by Pierre Sabak. Pierre, how are you, brother?
I'm fantastic, thank you. It's great to have you back on your show again, so thank you very much for inviting me. It's always great to be on.
It's awesome to have you. So you guys, let me just talk a little bit about Pierre. So first off, it's an honor for me to have Pierre here. In my opinion, he has written some of the most authoritative, deeply profound books ever written on really the story of humanity. But so here's his bio. He's an expert on ancient symbolism, etymology, and is widely recognized as a leading academic in the fields of religion, mythology, mysticism, and the esoteric. God, I love this guy. New ufology as a study of occult symbolism to deconstruct the ufological tradition, a restricted teaching equated with the flying saucer and its occupants, aka a crew member of a vessel. This is a completely new field of research, and the focus of new ufology is scaphology, which is the study of angelic boats within religion and mythology. Pierre's work on the saucer cults detail a secret alien code found within language, which he refers to as the artifact, and one that is identified archaically with the angelic sailor and its human, non-human host. So as I always do on this podcast, before we get into our amazing points, how did Pierre Sabak get to this point here today?
Okay, well, first of all, I was very interested in ancient archaeology, and I read the books by Robert Temple about the Dogon, and the Dogon was this reptilian race which was identified with Sirius. In addition, I also read David Icke as well, and I thought his work was very interesting in terms of the symbolism of the seraph. So I looked at those two works, and I thought it was interesting with David's work, but there was a lot of anecdotal evidence, and I wanted to see if there was actually more evidence in terms of the symbolism and in terms of the serpent. So this was basically the entry point, and once I started to deconstruct the symbolism of the serpent, then it became very evident to me that I had to look at ancient languages. I had to study etymology, etymos, which is truth in the Greek. So looking at words, and this is where my interest in the artifact really stems from. Now, the artifacts are these polyglottal symbols. So these are word plays which are universal, which work throughout many different languages, and which are identified with the artifact, which is this cultural and symbolic representation in regards to the serpent. And the serpent, it can be understood as this non-human angel. And this really goes back to the tradition of scaphology. Now, scaphology comes from the etymology of scapto, which is to dig out or to hollow. So this is a reference to a hollow vessel or a ship. In the Greek tradition, this was a mooring vessel, which was a small vessel which accompanied a larger vessel. So scaphology is the study, if you like, of angelic vessels within the religious and mythological tradition. And this actually goes back to the angelic sailor, and in particular, it goes back to the bloodline of the king, which is identified with the seraph. And so it's kind of useful for us here to identify some of the related etymologies. So I was saying earlier on that Amir, which is a prince, is related to Amar, which is a type of jinn, and Amara, which is a fleet. Now, the correspondence is also found in the Hebrew and in the Arabic between Melech, a king, Malak, which is an angel. You find in the same similarities between Sarif, which is a lord, and seraph, which is a serpent. Now, this is kind of very interesting because in the Hebrew, the etymology of seraph, which is to combine, is related to tefa, which is to stitch. And this is equated with a stitched or a grafted bloodline, which is identified with the serpent. And so we're finding these correspondences, for example, between the serpent and this royal or angelic lineage between, for example, you've got Basilius, a king, which is related to Basilikos, a serpent. In the Persian, you've got Mal, which is a leader, which is related to Ma, which is a serpent. In the Arabic, you've got Sarif, which is related to the seraph. Again, within the Greek, you've got an archon, which is a wordplay on drakon. But again, the word archon or arcane, which is to rule, is coming from the Aramaic root aka, which is to talk, which is related to akan, a seraph, and akim, which is a king. So therefore, the archon, an angel or a ruler, is tied back within the Semitic languages to akim, which is a sovereign. And as we said before, this sovereign is concordant with Melech, a king, and Malak, an angel. Now, this is going back, if you like, into the traditions of the angelic sailor. So, for example, you've got polymorphic symbolism. Now, polymorphic symbol is a wordplay which has multiple meanings. So, for example, Malak, an angel, is related to Malak, a sailor. And you're seeing similarities also with the cherubim, which are, if you like, within the angelic tradition, there are two groups of angels.
Right.
One is non-human, which is the seraphim. So you're seeing that there's a relationship between seraph and sapana, sailor, and
so let me ask you a question just about that real quick, just for the audience. What do you think when we define the two angelic divisions, these two factions? We have the seraphim and we have the cherubim. But the seraphim right now, like, what do you think a seraphim really looks like? And before you answer, there's been movies in Hollywood where they have showed these entities. You know, one movie, they were very profoundly physically descriptive, which is the movie Jupiter Ascending, which is, again, a Wachowski brother production, which is, again, the people that created the Matrix movies.
Do
you think that is an accurate representation of what a seraphic angelic being or an Angelian looks like?
Absolutely. I think that's a very accurate representation of a seraphim. I'm inclined to think that the wings are symbolic, which are symbolic of a heavenly deity. I know within some of the anecdotal records that people say that some of these beings have wings, but irrespective, you're dealing with a being which is at least 7 foot tall,
right.
Which is very muscular,
right.
and is very reptilian in its actual appearance. And that in some respects is quite different from, let's say, different representations of the jinn, which are represented as hungry. Now, the jinn are represented as hungry because they're emancipated and they look skeletal. So the symbol of the skeleton is sometimes used to represent these vampiric beings. But again, you've got the grey alien, which is affiliated to the seraphim, and that they are closely aligned. And particularly when you're looking at the symbol of the eye as well. So, for example, Drakos, which is the old Greek word for an eye, is related to Drakein, which is to look, which is also related to gleam or to shine. Similarities are also found with the Watchers. Erin, where the Watchers are the shining ones. And again, in the Semitic also, you've got Sopheth, a Watcher, which is related to Seraph, a serpent, Serapha, which is fire. So the shining ones, or the Watchers, are depicted as these sentinels, which are understood to be a type of dragon. And this really goes back to the basis of religions as well. So you see that there is this correspondence between Theos, a god, Theros, a Watcher, Phos, which is light. Now, that is a polyglottal symbol. That also plays out in the Semitic between the Elohim, Erin, which is a watcher, and also Awim, which is the plural noun, the old Semitic noun for the serpents. But again, even with Yahweh's name, you've got Yara, which is the old verb to see. It's related to Ra, which is to see or to perceive, which was the Ra, which was the Egyptian sun deity. But again, Yara is also closely identified with Ir, which is a watcher. Ir, a watcher, or Erin are the watchers, which are concordant with the Elohim. So there is this relationship between the watcher and the serpent. Again, within the Greek, you're seeing that there's this correspondence between Theos, a god, Therion, which is a beast. Now, the beast within symbolism is used to denote the dragon. As we said before, there was that correspondence between the Elohim, Erin, a watcher, and Awim, which are the serpents. Again, the serpents can be understood to be a type of jinn, because Awar is a type of jinn, which is related to Awa, which is the air. Now, the air is important because the air represents the spirit, and it also represents the Ruach Elohim. So in this respect, the Awim, which are the serpents, which are understood to be Awa, which is a type of jinn, Awin, the serpents, is concordant with Awa, the air. So they're the Ruach Elohim. But
Right.
we're finding similarities also with the seraphim, because the seraphim, seraph, a serpent, is related to, you've got Raphi, which is high. So the
Right.
serpents are related to the high ones of the Bene Elohim, the sons of the gods, who are described as the Erin, which are the watchers, or the shining ones, which in the Testament of Amram are described as looking like vipers.
Right.
So we know that the Erin are actually the seraphim, and is another word for the seraphim, hence they are the shining ones.
So all of that is amazing, and that's a very good explanation. Let me just ask you some other questions related to that. Do you think that any of the watchers are cherubim, or they're all seraphim?
Okay, that's a very good question. What we're dealing here with is with the dialectic. So the angelic host are combined with the seraphic host, but the seraphic host, underneath the seraphic host, you've got the cherubim. So they're a lower order of angels. So you've got the non-human angels, which are the highest angels, and then underneath the highest form of angel, you've got the cherubim.
Right.
Now, the cherub, a sword, is related to carib, which is a boat. In fact, it's a small landing craft. So the cherubim themselves are represented as angelic marines. Now, a marine is a very good translation of the word cherub, because cherub is a sword, but remember that cherub is closely aligned to carib, which is a boat.
Right.
So an armed soldier who is equated with a boat is a marine. We could actually say a space marine, but this is really an angelic sailor. But the same comparison is also found with seraph, a serpent, sapan, because there's this switch between the P and the F in morphology, as in Pater and Father, Per and Fire.
Right.
So Sapan, a sailor, and Safina, which is a ship. So again, the seraphim themselves are equated with ships. As we said before, there was this correspondence between Malach, an angel, and Malach, a sailor. Now, this is all going back to the angelic traditions of Yahweh Sabaoth. Yahweh Sabaoth is the Lord of the host.
Right.
Now, Sabaoth host is related to Sevet, which is the crew of a naval vessel. So again, and Teva, which is an ark. Again, this is going back to the archons, which are the rulers or the angels. You've got an ark, which is a circular vessel. And again, the old etymology of ark is going back to olkas, which is a large carrier vessel within the Greek. So yeah, this is the symbolism. And
so along that line then, so we know from the hierarchical ranking order, we know the seraphim are the highest, like you said, the lords of the host, the Ruach Elohim, the Ben Elohim. I cannot even pronounce the words. Where are they though in, like, how would I say this? Like, if you were looking at them from a fighting aspect, like how would you classify the power / capabilities of the seraphim with the cherubim?
Okay.
Like, is it that much more powerful?
That is the case. I mean, there was a war between humans and the seraphic host, and it looks like that the humans lost. So there is this, if you like, this uneasy alliance between the humanist tradition and the seraphic tradition, which is split between the Pythagorean Euclidean tradition.
Right.
This is the two pillars of Freemasonry, which represents the humanist aspect, which are these proto-human angels, and then you've got the seraphic component. So there is that relationship between Puthos-Agoras, the speaker of the serpent, which is Pythagoras, which is the seraphim, Euclid, Kurd, which is an ape. Euclid is to copy or to ape. So mathematics copies the external world, but is this esoteric signifier of the humanist tradition.
So why do you think then, when we talk about the stitched and grafted bloodline, and we can talk about the genetic, manipulation, and you do a really good job in holographic culture of explaining this in many, many places in the book. And again, guys and gals, if you're watching this show, when you do watch this, please, by all means, go to Pierre Sabak Books, .com and order these books. You cannot get them on Amazon for very specific reasons. Hello. But again, I have both of his books. And again, we're going to do another podcast in the future on his other book, The Murder of Reality. But holographic culture is incredible. But regarding that, so why? Because I always tell people who come to me and say, Jay, you're crazy, you're a conspiratorial, whatever. And I say, guys, it's really simple now. There have been great authors who have decoded all of this, again, such as yourself. But the reality is we already scientifically know that we have a reptilian and a mammalian parts of our brains. So there is all the proof that you need to realize or know regarding this genetic manipulation. So why did they create, if the reptilian seraphic host won,
Mhm.
Why did they give a shit about creating human beings? Are we a perfected version of Seraphic DNA, or what are we, in your opinion?
Okay, my understanding of this, and this again is going deeply into etymology, but basically you had this uneasy alliance between the cherubim and the seraphim.
Right.
Now they created this, if you like, this composite being. You see, the cherubim are not sexually compatible with the
Right.
seraphim, so they
Right.
created the Adamic man, which is compatible sexually both with the cherubim
Right.
and with the seraphim. Now the representation or the symbolism or the creation of man is identified with Orion. And again, so you've got Rigel, which is related to Orion, but essentially the bloodline of the Adamic man is concordant with Orion. But again, it is contrasted with the Nephilim as well, which they're linked into the hand of Orion. So this again is going back to the Covenant of Worlds, which is represented as Orion. But the Adamic man and his bloodline is also closely concordant with the Martian as well. So there is this relationship between Machadim, Mars, Adam, and Adam, which means red.
Right.
Adama, which is the earth, the red earth. The red earth is Mars, Machadim, which is Mars, the Martian.
Right.
So, so again, it's a complicated history, and it's one which is encoded through allegory, halosgoria, other speaking. Now, other speaking is really referring to the others, because the others is another word for the angels or aliens. And then, hence, there is this relationship within the Greek between halos, which is an halo, and
Right.
allos, which is the others, or another, right?
Others, right.
Which are the allogenes, which is an alien.
Yes.
And the halo represents the Axari, which are the brothers, a brother of light. Now, the Axari is where you get the original translation in the Latin with the Illuminati. The illuminated ones are referring to the Axari, a brother of light. Now, the word Axari, a brother of light, is a wordplay on Axari, a brother of an angel. But the word angel is polymorphic in the Aramaic. Zah, which is an angel, is polymorphic of an alien. So an angel and an alien are actually interrelated. And as we said before, there's this correspondence with Sa, which is a prince, and Sira, which is a boat. We would say lordship.
Right.
Again, Malak an angel, Malak a sailor, Malak a king. In English, we would say lordship, kingship. This is a representation of the angelic bloodline, which is closely aligned to the monarchical lineage, which is depicted as grafted. Hence the symbolism of the family tree. The family tree denotes a twig. Clon, which is a twig in the Greek, is related to the etymology of clone, that which is grafted. And again, within symbolism, the rose is a very important plant. Spire, which is a rose, is related to Spyro, which is a dragon. But the rose is a plant which is very easily grafted. And so we're dealing here again with a grafted lineage, which can be represented as a family tree. It can also be represented with the family shield. Now, the shield is used to represent an angelic vessel. In the Greek traditions, this would be the aegis. So a deity would carry a shield, which is the aegis, which is related to Agioi, which is a saint. And this would be a planted bloodline, which would be closely concordant with the neophyte, neophytus, the newly planted. But again, there is this correspondence in the Greek between theos, a god, thurios, which is a shield.
Right.
Again, in the Greek, Opelon, a shield, is related to Pleon, which is a boat. Now, Opelon, a shield, if we look at the polyglottal symbols, and this is very interesting, we see that there's this correspondence between Arpui, which is a harpy, literally an abductor. We've got Erpaton, a reptile. We've got, I'm just trying to think of the word to shine, but basically Erpaton, a reptile, is closely related to the shining ones within the Greek. And we're seeing that there is this relationship with Pleon, which is a boat. So the shield represents the boat. And in Greek symbolism, the boat and the shield is often combined to represent this circular arc of the archons, which are arc-like or round. But again, within the Semitic, you've got the seraphim, which is related to Seraphic, which is fire. You've got Seraph, which is related to Shover, which is a captor. And again, Theos, the god, is related to Thera, which is to trap, because the angels are concordant with the abduction. And this is very important.
Right.
So for example, when you're looking at the angelic host, so for example, with the Arpui as a harpy, but you're seeing Yahweh Sabaoth, Lord of the host. Sabak host is related to Salb, which is abduction. Right. So the angels are related to abduction. It's the same with Malak, an angel, and Mikak, which is to abduct or to take.
Right.
again, sorosal is sura, which is to grasp. In English, drag and dragon. These word plays are polyglottal. You've got the lamia. The lamia, the Greek word lamia, is coming from the Aramaic lami, which is to shine, again, is a representation of the seraphim.
Right.
Lambano, which is to grasp. Again, in the Greek, drakon and drasomai is to grasp or to take. Masak and masik, which is a monster, which is to grab or to take. So, again, the reptile, rapier. Rapier, reptile, rapier, which is to rape or to grasp. Again, with the serpent, Hanas, the serpent in the Arabic, is related in the Hebrew to Anas, which is a rapist. The rapist is the reptile. And again, when you're looking at the rapture within this biblical tradition, the raptor is related to literally snatching, and it's related to the seraphim. The seraphim are these abductors.
Right.
In the Latin traditions, this would be basically the nymphs, nymphaleptos, which is to take off or abduct by a nymph.
Okay, so let me ask you the hard question right now, because you're explaining to in very good detail, like when you talk about abduction, but I want to put this in a much more definable, relatable, understandable way.
Yeah.
And obviously, I'm asking your opinion.
Go on.
Are they abducting us? Okay, and again, you do a good job again in holographic culture talking about gray aliens. The abduction scenarios. You mentioned John Mack. You mentioned David Jacobs. I'm very familiar with all their books.
Yeah, they're excellent books.
You know, obviously, all of them have come to the conclusion that's very negative. So, are they abducting us? And again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but are they abducting us as food, as genetic experimentation?
Yeah.
Are they doing something even beyond those two things? Because a lot of people, and again, maybe they're kind of positive or being too positive or projecting positivity, but they're also saying that they're genetically manipulating us to make us into something for the future. Now, what is your position on why they continue to abduct us?
I think that's a very complicated question. I mean, in some respects, we are seen to be their property, and this is basically a large experiment. As far as I understand, the seraphim are interested in emergent systems, so they're interested in evolutionary cycles, and these evolutionary cycles are related into very vast computational programs, which are equated with basically the evolution of different species on different planets. So I see that they are related to they are planters of different worlds, and they have, if you like, multiple worlds in which they are using emergent systems in order to evolve.
And let me just stop you right there real quick, just to throw something in there about that. And you and I obviously talked about this, but if you go back, any of you watching this show right now, and you go back and you watch Matrix 1 and Matrix 2, they are talking about the emergent systems. The agents of the Matrix are specifically talking. And then, of course, in part 2, the architect, which is Yaldabaoth / Yahweh / whatever, the architect of the Matrix, they're telling about the emergent systems that they create, that we as human beings are in, and they're watching us evolve, hoping that we evolve. So anyway, I just wanted to put that there so people can understand what emergent systems
I think also when we begin to break down some of the etymologies, it's actually very interesting. So for example, when you look at the Aramaic word Zah, which is a polymorphic word of an angel, alien, or a visitor. So remember, the angels are synonymous with an alien.
Angelian.
Yeah, an Angelian, that's right. So we see that there's this correspondence between Zah, which is an angel, and Sera, which is a boat. Now, Sera is a special type of wordplay. I refer to this as diptych paranomasia. So the Hebrew word Sera, a boat, is related to Sira, which is Sirius. So this is denoting the Ben Sira.
From Sirius. Right.
Exactly. The Ben Sira, son of a boat, is a diptych paranomasia of the sons of Sirius. The sons of Sirius are equated with boats. But not only this, the sons of Sirius, which are the Elohim, are also equated with the planting of life on the earth. So there is this correspondence between Zah, which is an angel or an alien, Sa, which, as we said, was a prince, but there's this correspondence with Zara, which is seed. And again, we're seeing that there's a correspondence between Sira, boat, and Yetzirah, which is creation, because the boats are equated with the planting of Zara, which is a seed, which is related to Zah, which is an angel. So this is panspermia. And so this is going back into the ancient traditions of the planting. So
how old do you think with panspermia right now? And again, you talk about, again, defined very well, the first creation, second creation in the book.
Yeah.
We're obviously the second creation now.
Yes, that's
How
right.
far back do you think it goes? And, Jacob is really smart about timelines and stuff like that. And he's always, they hack the timelines.
Absolutely.
So how do we even know, Pierre, truthfully, like how far anything goes back? I mean, can we believe anything in the history books from a timeline perspective?
Yes and no. You remember that history is an occult language.
It's
written in allegory. Yeah. Well, exactly. So history is allegory, and allegory is history. So it's this concealed, or private discourse. So allegoria is other speaking. So when you're looking at, for example, Homer's tradition, and remember Homer is related to a man, Homer Sapien, which is this humanist tradition.
Sure.
Oh, Homer is writing in this codified history. It's this private discourse, and it's astrotheological. So it's codified. So the way into that is through symbolism, particularly polymorphic symbolism, which are these symbols which have multiple meanings. So yeah, we're dealing here with a codified history. It goes back aeons. I wouldn't really like to put a time space on it, but we're dealing here with thousands and thousands of years.
That's what I figured.
This is something which is very ancient. And I need to emphasize that the race of man is also very ancient.
Right.
And again, it's going back to the anthropos and the corruption of the anthropos.
Right.
So if you look, for example, with the first creation within the Gnostic traditions, the first creation is the creation of the anthropos. Now, included within the anthropos is the Elohim, and we're also dealing here with the human species as well. Now, the anthropos literally means human, but the anthropos was used to denote humanoids. We're dealing here with sentient beings.
Right.
So, for example, the seraphim could be described as an anthropos because it's humanoid in terms of that it's sentient.
It's sentient.
Intelligent.
Yeah.
Okay. So, much like how we would use the word humanoid to describe an alien, but we would also use the word alien to describe an alien, they were using the same type of language within the ancient Semitic and within the Greek. So they referred to them both as the anthropos, which is this humanoid, but they also referred to them as the allos genes, which is alien. Again, in the Aramaic, Zara is an angel or an alien, which again, it has this connotation, Zar, of Zor, which is light. And again, it's going back to the Axari, which is a brother of light, which is concordant with the Axari, which is a brother of an angel. Zar, an angel, is related to Sira, which is a boat, which is Sirius. Now, this is very important when we're actually dealing with the Seraphic tradition. And again, there is this correspondence between Sabaoth, the host, Sabak, which is the host, Sepheth, which is a viper, and Seraph. Now, in this respect, Yahweh Sabaoth is the Lord of the host, but specifically, he's the Lord of the Seraphic host. In the same way that Apue and Abduct is related to Erpaton, a reptile, which is related to that which is radiant, Apto, which is radiant, again, within the Semitic, Sophefa Watcher, Seraph, you've got Serapha, which is fire. And again, Apue and Abduct is related to Ops, which is an eye, Ap, which is to seize. So again, they are depicted as the shining ones or the watchers. This all goes back to Sirius. Sarah, which means a spark. Sirius, the sparkling one. The sparkling one denotes the seraphim, Sophefa Watcher, and Serapha, which is fire. So the seraphim, like the jinn, are said to be born from fire. They are born from fire because this is an astrotheological marker of Sirius. This is why in the Quran, Yahweh, or Allah, should I say, is described as the Lord of Sirius. This is making reference to Yahweh Sabaoth, which is Sabak host, Sepheth, which is a viper. He's Lord of the Seraphic host. The Seraphic host is concordant with Sirius. So they're one and the same thing.
So do you think then the Covenant of Worlds, that man, the Adamic man, the Martian, was this war, again, the war in heaven, the Seraphic hosts from Sirius versus the man from Mars, Orion, wherever, Pleiades, wherever.
Well,
how long has it been going on? How long has it been going on? Literally, we can't comprehend it, right?
It's been going on for thousands of years, and certainly you're finding the partition within the priesthood, which is expressive, if you like, of monarchical and republican ideas. So
Right.
it's going back to Plato's Republic, which was the break from the Eloist tradition. This idea that the monarch are those who are the sons of the boats, who are identified with lordship, that they were the rulers. And the system itself was challenged. Like, so, for example, with Zeno's Republic, from the etymology Xenos, which is an alien, the implication is one who is angelic. So Zeno wrote the Republic, in which he was arguing that human beings, not lordship, but those mortals, should be able to make their own laws, and there should be a meritocracy in which the best person for the job is put in positions of power. So we're not dealing here with through bloodline anymore, but we're dealing here as a type of meritocracy. And this actually split the priesthood. And we're seeing this split within the priesthood between the Seraphic and the humanist tradition, this split between the Sunni and the Shiite, Protestant and Catholic. You find it within Buddhism as well. And it's this dialectic. I describe it as the seraphim-cherubim dialectic.
Right.
The dialectic between non-human angels, proto-human angels. So it's it's ancient.
But so of course, but so my mind immediately wants to go to define the hierarchy of like good and bad, and obviously we know we live in the realm of duality. So it's nearly impossible to find out. But again, you and I spoke with Jacob on the previous podcast that it's logical to deduct that there are seraphic beings aligned with proto-human beings, just as there are human beings aligned with negative seraphic beings, correct?
Absolutely. And again, you've got human angels, which are Adamic angels. So you've got the Ishim. The Ishim, again, are this Adamic angels. So they're actually human, like ourselves. But then you've got the cherubim, which are proto-human. So again,
what do you think a proto-human looks like compared to an Ishim? What is the differentiation?
Well, I can tell you in terms of the anecdotal evidence. The proto-humans are said to be immensely good-looking. They're often white, but not necessarily, because again, some of the black races trace themselves back to the Pleiades.
Right.
And I have a sneaky suspicion that the angels, because basically we're conditioned in general to find people of the opposite sex attractive from the same racial group, if the angels want to make, let's say, a psychological impact, then the cherubim are going to appear to black people as black people and to white people as white people. I know, actually studying the traditions, that some of the black races also go back to the Pleiades in the same way that the white races also go back to the Pleiades. So again, you're dealing with these proto-humans. So the proto-humans are very good looking. They're conventionally like very tall, very good looking.
Right.
And again, they would comprise of both the white and the black races within the occult and esoteric.
It's pretty fascinating. You would have to almost consider, or let me ask you, and I've asked you this before, but I'll ask you right now, why not on this podcast? For someone like you and me to be able to push our narratives close, because we are both getting now closer and closer to the mainstream. And you will be within 6 months in the mainstream, because I'm manifesting that. And I'm somewhat already in the mainstream in a lot of ways. Are we, again, I don't ask this egoically, I ask this logically. Are you and I somewhat protected by something to allow our message to get out? I mean, it's Occam's razor.
Well, I suspect probably when you were younger, I think you were probably a very driven person. I was always a very driven person, and I was always very aware of my mortality as well, in terms of that I felt that I had something important that I had to do. And I suspect with yourself also that you were
same thing.
Yeah. So I think that is borne out psychologically. So I felt driven and compelled to do this. And I certainly know that when I was a younger person, and when I was younger, I wanted to be an artist, and I was always trying to paint and better myself. But then this led into teaching, which led into academia, which led into writing, which also fed back into illustrating my own books as well. And I've always felt driven, and I felt that as a result, I think that maybe you're right, that
We have a guardian angel or angels or something. And again, this is not egoically, but how would you and I be allowed to make this impact in a world that is pure illusion?
Yeah.
How would it happen?
Well, yeah, it's a good question. I just can, all I can say is that I've always been driven. I've always been compelled. There's been something pushing me forward to the next stage. It's almost this feeling. Yeah, I've got something to do in my life, and I've got to do it. And I got to 29 when I was like, okay, I'm going to write The Murder of Reality, and I started that book, and that took 7 years to write. I didn't expect it to take, but I was teaching as well.
Right, of course.
But yeah, there was this drive to do that, and now, certainly as I'm middle-aged now, I'm like, well, I really feel driven in terms of what I'm doing. I think that this is important. It's an important.
So let me ask you this: do you think? Okay, so I have to ask you a very personal question. Does most of your relatives think that you're insane? Like they think that I'm insane?
I don't think my mother understands what I write. I think it's just she's just not academic. She didn't go to university, and she doesn't get it.
Right, but if you told her that you write about seraphic reptilian beings and proto-human beings, would she look at you like you were nuts?
Well, my mother says to me, ignorance is bliss. I don't want to know.
Okay. So that is a good statement then. So my family is the same way. I'm the oldest of 9 children. I have one sister who was at my house last night who was literally, I was this close. I had her watching the Matrix scene. And I thought she was going to I see it. But then she ran, as soon as Neo got scared and said, unplug me, she ran and got unscathed too. But it's easier for people to be that way. Right? Like ignorance is bliss is 85% of the population of this planet. They would prefer to be safe.
Yeah.
Right?
I totally agree. My father was much more open to it. And he, in fact, when I wrote the book, The Murder of Reality, he was like, he was really, really proud in terms of
That's so awesome, man. I'm so happy. Is your dad still around?
No, he died very recently.
Oh man, I'm so sorry to hear that. But he actually supported your work and appreciated it. That's amazing.
He absolutely loved it. I mean, I've got an identical twin brother. He's a writer as well. I mean, he writes poetry and human rights.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. So wait a minute. So your twin brother, does he support this, or he doesn't read it at all?
Yeah, I mean, he's interested in this type of thing. I think he's also he's much more interested in the spiritual element, and so he's very interested in Buddhism and non-duality.
Oh, that's awesome.
He's written translations of the Tao Te Ching, the Xin Xing Ming.
That's amazing. You should have him come on the podcast. So then he's got to be familiar with David Hawkins and the map of consciousness, non-duality. That's amazing. That's wow. That's so cool.
Actually, he probably is. That's his kind of specialism.
Of course.
So when we and again, I think that this is very interesting because we're identical twins, and it's like we're pushing slightly, if you like, different agendas. My brother's pushing the human rights agenda through his poetry and his writing and his translations, whereas I'm very interested in the ancient theology and mythology behind angels.
So was your father an academic?
No, he wasn't, but I describe him as very philosophical. He was extremely philosophical.
What did he do? Like, what was his profession?
Well, he was a businessman. But again, my father inspired me a lot. I mean, so when I told my dad, when I was 29, I was going, no, I don't know if I should self-publish or get a publisher. It's going to be really difficult to do. And my father was really optimistic. He'd say, son, if you want to do this, if you want to be successful, you have to build your own printing press and print your own books. So that was my dad's attitude. Awesome, so anything could be overcome. So that's so amazing because my father is a very successful man. He's retired. Him and my mom and dad are still married. They had 9 kids. Right. But my dad is not supportive of anything that I do. Nothing. Right, okay. He thinks I'm completely insane. He doesn't care that I'm, an international best-selling author and all these things. He thinks literally that I'm insane. Right, so it's like, it's amazing that you have that support or had that support from your father. But your mom was supportive. She just is, like you said, she would just rather live in her bubble, right? Well, so, for example, I showed my book. My mother's got a copy of Holographic Culture, and I showed a copy, and she's had it for like the last year or so since it's come out. Sure. We were flicking through it together. She said, what's the picture of your father doing in this book? And it's like, haven't you seen it, Mum? It's, you know, it's on the first couple of pages. It's like, I gave her this book, but she hasn't even bothered to look at it. So
It's like you said, man, Pierre, we talked about people prefer easy. They prefer just being asleep, being, you know, again, the blue pill, you know, to refer to the matrix, because it's easier, Pierre. I mean, what you and I choose to pursue is not easy for average people.
It's not easy for average people, but again, I think that, again, we're dealing with this classified discourse. And again, when you look at the etymology of classical, classical relates to classis, which is this naval fleet. The naval or noble tradition, naval and noble are related. Nobilis, meaning the highborn, or those who know. It's where you get the etymology nocere, which is to know. So they are the ones who know. They are the classical tradition, which is classified. It's classified because it's this angelic tradition. Malak an angel, Malak a sailor, which goes into the bloodline of the king, Malak, which is a kingship. So again, it's something which has been hidden. It's been something, it's an open secret. It's been known about for thousands of years, but it's been encoded within the scriptures, within the hieroglyphs, etc. And the priesthood, or the disciperati, as I describe them, the deceivers, they have kept this knowledge, and they've hoarded this knowledge, and they've kept it away from the mainstream. Now, it's very, but I think in terms of my own research, it's actually very, it's integral, and it's really important in terms of theology and mythology, because I argue, certainly within the scaphological tradition, you cannot understand the mythological tradition. You cannot understand the religious tradition without understanding this restricted or classified tradition related to these angelic vessels. So the flying wheels, the opening wheels, pana, which is to turn, is related to this tradition of scaphology, new ufology as I describe it, which is the deconstruction of the occult tradition regarding flying saucers. But the etymology,
like you call them IFOs and not UFOs, right? And again, it's everywhere. It's always been in the paintings of Michelangelo. It's always been in front of us.
It's always been there. I describe them as IFOs because the priesthood know what they are. They've been deconstructed. They're understood. They're buried underneath temples. Again, it's connected into the numismatological symbolism, which is equated to the saucer or the votive dish, which goes back to money as well. So if you look at money, the money or the coin has a serrated edge. The serrated edge is a symbol of the cog or the wheel. Again, the etymology of Shen in Hebrew, Shen is a tooth, is related to Shen, which is a cog. Now, the tooth or the cog is used to represent the wheels, which are interlinked, because these vessels are made out of a series of interlinking cogs, and this is how they're represented within the ancient world. And they're buried at different sites. But again, it's very interesting when you look at the votive dish, because the votive dish is a circle, and you've got a bobble in the middle. Now, the symbol in the hieroglyph denotes Sira, which is Sirius. As we said before, Ra is Sir is the mystery, Ra is the mysteries of Ra, the mysteries of Ra is Sirius. So again, Ra, the sun god, ostensibly, he's going back, is twinned, or is going back to Sira, which is Sirius, which can be represented as Sira, which is a boat. Now, the opening wheels are represented as a votive dish, so you've got a circle within a circle. Again, this bobble is, if you like, an axis in the wheel, but again, it can be interrelated with a triangle, which can be a tooth, which again denotes the tooth and the cog of the wheel. So again, these votive dishes correspond with these angelic vessels. And so we see that there is this relationship between worship, ship in English, as in to venerate an angelic carrier or a vessel, as we would find within the nave of the church, which is related to navis, which is a boat. In the Greek sanctuaries also, you've got naus, which is a sanctuary of a temple, nos, which is a boat. So the temples themselves are demarcated in terms of ship or boat signifiers. And this is because in the ancient world, they would bury these vessels underneath temples. And so therefore, boat symbolism is very integral. It's very important to the representation of.
So that's a good question around that. And obviously this is your opinion, but was it the Seraphic hosts that built the pyramids? Because listen, right, we know the Hall of Amenti. We've heard all the rumors and the stories that there's a ship under the pyramid, and they've done the thermic scanning, and they've seen that there are things under there. So do you think? And again, it's opinion, but do you think that that's who built the pyramids, or the pyramids were even before that?
All right, well, let's get back to basics. And this is what so frustrates me about the scholars, because the intelligentsia are concealing. So
Of
we're
course.
dealing here
The
with
priesthood.
concealment. They know what the pyramids are, okay?
Exactly.
And they're not burial chambers. That is a
No.
lie. It's quite the opposite. Okay, the Arabic word harama pyramid is related to harem. The harem is harama, which is prohibited. These were the private quarters of women. So basically, with the pyramids, you're dealing here with the pharaoh, and you're dealing here with the type of temple which was connected to the harem. So we're dealing here with this conjugation of this matriarchal and pharaonic lineage, which is combined together in a type of harem. Again, within the pantheon, the pantheon was equated with the virgin, and again, the same idea of the temple.
Right.
This is the idea of the boat and giving birth. Birth, as in the birth canal, is equated with the angelic vestiture, and it's also equated with lordship and this angelic lineage, which are equated to the archons, or the angels or rulers, concordant with Dracon. But again, in the Semitic, Akan, a seraph, is related to Akim, which is a king, Aka, which is to talk or to speak. Again, the traditional etymology of Malak, an angel, according to rabbinical scholars, is related to Amar, which is to talk or to command. But Amar is a wordplay on Amara, which is a fleet.
Amar.
Again, Malak, an angel, Malak, a sailor. So we're dealing here with the angelic host, which are represented as this naval fleet, which are concordant with the noble. Noble is to know, Nosir, which is to know, which are the high ones. The high ones are, well, the high ones refer to the Elohim. The Elohim can be represented both as the Elake, which is a living God, is polymorphic of a high creature.
Right.
We would say an extraterrestrial biological entity, but they can dematerialize. So they are both physical, but they are also spiritual. So they are represented also as the Ruach Elohim, the high spirits.
Right.
And this is denotational of a holographic culture. So these are masters of waveform. They have deconstructed the waveform. They've deconstructed the particle and the wave, and therefore they can exist outside of time, and they can materialize and dematerialize.
So let me ask you something about the deconstruction of the waveform. Did David Icke get his information from you? Because when I started reading David Icke 10 years ago, he was talking about waveform particle duality, holographic, aspects of reality. Were you already down that path into research, or did you guys kind of fuse just reading that?
Well, I think David Icke was getting his research from Michael Talbot, which was the holographic universe. If you like, when I read Michael Talbot, the holographic universe, and particularly when I saw the relationship between a high creature, and then we've got the Ruach Elohim, which are the high spirits. So they're both physical, particle, and they can dematerialize the waveform. That got me thinking, well, we're dealing here with the hologram. And the hologram, therefore, must be this, that they are a holographic culture. They've deconstructed the waveform. So they exist outside of time.
So for people to understand this better, and I'm sorry I'm stopping you on this, because I want this to be amazing, and I want people to really follow. Is this, because you and I and Jacob talked about this, and obviously Rex and I and Jacob talked about this too, but is this what is happening? So you're literally telling us, and you've done an amazing job in this book. Again, please buy his book, Holographic Culture, PierreSmocbooks.com. Are you basically decoding the reality that these beings, these Ruach, these high spirits where they can dematerialize, are they puppeteering / parroting / piloting our ruling elites in the government structure? Is that what's really happening?
Absolutely. And I think that you're finding clues to this, certainly within the symbolism. So, for example, you find that the word government is related to gubernatio, which is to steer, from the Greek etymology, kubernao, to steer a vessel. Again, in the Greek, you've got a minister, which is aretsa, upa. I'm trying to remember the etymology, but it's related to one who steers a boat or a vessel, one who rows. Again, the ship of state is denotational as again the cabinet, a cabin as in a cabin of a vessel. So these are all signifiers of the angelic host. And as we said before, that heaven and earth is mirrored. So there is this pairing between the ship of state and then its reflection or its mirror image with heaven, which are equated with the angelic host. And this really goes into the symbolism of the parallel society. And Plutarch certainly in his writing makes reference to the parallel society, or he insinuates the existence of the parallel society, right, in terms of this humanist component and then this non-humanist component.
But the non-humanist is always the Seraphic reptilian, right? Or is it, right, even more? Is it something else?
Well, again, people will say, well, you know, Pierre, you're being rather limited because there's lots of beings which are visiting this planet, and you're just talking about the serpent. But the reason why I talk about the serpent is because this planet is owned by the Seraphim.
Exactly.
They planted this world. Okay, so yes, there are other beings, and I'm sure that the other beings are following protocols which have been put in place by the Seraphim. Okay, but essentially the Seraphim planted this world. As we said before, there was this correspondence between Sira, which is Sirius, Zar, which is an angel or alien, which is related to Zor, which is light, which again has this correspondence of Sirius, which is a shining one, which is equated with the Seraphim, and Serapha, which is fire. But there's this correspondence between Sira, boat, yet Sira, which is creation, and again Zar, an angel, Zara, which is seed, which is equated to sowing. So this idea of planters of worlds, they are the Elohim. So they own this world, and right, and again, so we're seeing that the representation of the serpent, therefore, is very much pivotal within the symbolism.
So this is amazing, by the way. This is so brilliant. People are going to love this podcast. But so, and again, I'm always saying this, and you and I have talked about this, but all these people that get caught up into politics. Yeah. It's such a total distraction and waste of time, because here you are, you fully declined and decoded that these Seraphic Elohim are literally piloting these quote unquote figure-headed people through their dematerialization, and then also through their probably ability to manipulate, like you said, the waveform.
Absolutely.
So it's like you can't trust anyone on any side. There is no way to know. Like, so, you know, to put it really simply, why do we see Trump appear to be literally one side of the coin one day and the other side of the coin the other day? There's no way to know if he's being piloted himself.
Absolutely. I think this is very, very difficult. I mean, this is why I gave up politics a long time ago and really delved into occult symbolism, because I really couldn't find any answers within the political discourse. But we are seeing that there are factions within the world between the humanist and the Seraphic component, basically.
But do you think, of course, and I will stay here on this. I by the way, I do want to talk about some of the other topics, and I've got a good 30 minutes. Are you okay to
get go for it, please?
Okay, so yes, there are factions, and you have done an amazing job again defining or declining the differentiation between parallel society and the breakaway civilization, and I'm going to let you speak to that in a second. But how do we ever know, Pierre, that the quote unquote factions, which some are humanistic, some are Seraphic, some are combinations of both, how do we ever really know who's quote unquote on Adamic man's side, if any? Are they ever on our side, or are they on their side of power, wealth, advancement of quote unquote their politics?
Well, as I said before, I think that the secret traditions, so within the secret societies, you've definitely got the split between the Seraphic component, which is monarchical and is equated with these grafted or stitched bloodlines. Again, this would go back into the ancient world to the reframe. Rapha, which is a giant, is related to the reframe, which literally means the spirits or the ghosts. The reframe is another word for the jinn. But we're seeing that the etymology of reframe or Rapha, which is to stitch, is closely related to Seraph, which is a serpent. So this again is this grafted bloodline, which is equated to the Nephilia, which is Orion. Again, Gibberim or Gibor, which is Orion within the Arabic. So the Gibberim were the heroes. And again, in the Greek, the word heroes is related to air, which is the air, basically, which are the Elohim, which are the high ones. So the heroes, again, are related to the Bene Elohim, the sons of the gods. Now, the Bene Elohim are described in the Testament of Amram as the Erin. The Erin are the Watchers or the Shining Ones, which are equated to the Elohim. But remember, Erin is related to Awim in the Old Semitic, which is a wordplay on the serpent. And so the Erin themselves in the Testament of Amram are described as looking like vipers.
Right.
Now, the Erin, which are the Shining Ones, are the serpents. Again, this reference to Sirius is concordant in the Hebrew with Seraph, Sopheth, which is a watcher. Again, within the Greek and the Aramaic, the Elohim, Erin, which is a watcher, Theos, God, Theos, a watcher, Phos, which is light. So these word plays are polyglottal. They play out in many, many different languages, but essentially they're all going back to the dog star. And the dog star is this star which is equated with the seraphim and the planting of worlds, which are equated with these angelic vessels.
So where do you think these seraphic Elohim exist / reside when they're not here intermingling with us? Are they, you hear rumors of quote unquote, they have colonies in the inner earth. There's so many conspiratorial stories. Do you think
they're interacting through the parallel society, and they always have been interacting through the parallel society.
Of course.
And again, we've got anecdotal evidence of this also. If you look at Mountbatten, in the case of Mountbatten, is Gardner saw a flying saucer which landed, and he wrote this testimony, which was signed by Mountbatten. Right. Now, I believe that flying saucer was coming to see Mountbatten. And again, it's very interesting. This was in the 1950s, and he talked about his electrician, Heath. Now, he didn't use the word Mr. Heath. He just uses the word Heath, his electrician. So he hasn't given him a title. Now, the word electrician is esoteric, because in Aramaic, in Arabic, you've got the cherubim. Now, the cherubim are related to Karuba, which is amber, and Karaba, which is electricity, because amber has this static, so it creates electricity. So when Mountbatten was talking about his electrician, right, and remember in the 1950s, electricians, again, his private electrician, in my opinion, he was probably referring, using the cult language of private discourse to refer to the cherubim angel, which was equated with this flying saucer. But again, we've also got traditions of Illuminov as well, who was one of the presidents of one of the Soviet states. Him and his one of the top ministers and his private chauffeur, he was taken by aliens. He talks about this on YouTube.
Aliens.
Whatever you want to describe it. He said that they look like. He said that they look like humans. So we're dealing here with.
Of course. Well, so I think, and again, there's been doctors. What's the guy's name? Taken by extraterrestrials. The guy William Tompkins, who was the.
Tompkins, yes.
Yeah. So his book is amazing. I highly recommend reading his book. Great insights in there, and he was he was allowed at 91 years old to talk because they didn't give a shit anymore.
Yeah.
He talks about what they call the Nordics, and the Nordics are definitely a human reptilian hybrid alien that definitely can dematerialize. It can definitely take the form, but like you said, they're tall, amazingly good looking, blue eyes, blonde hair, physically impressive beings. And again, they were created hypothetically to mate and, again, abduct and do all the genetic experimentation. But you're right. I mean, it's almost impossible to know who is who and what is what.
Well, exactly. When you actually look at MILAB, which is this idea that the military are working with aliens,
right?
This is an ancient idea.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? When you're looking at the symbolism of the Ophanim wheel, now the Ophanim wheel is often combined with the throne. So you've got what would be described as the throne chariot. Yeah. Now the throne chariot or the Ophanim wheels, which are the spinning wheels, which is used in the modern parlance to denote a flying saucer. So the throne chariot is often combined with a human being with a sword. So you've got cherub, which is a word, and cherub, which is a sword. But the wheel is often combined with the serpent, which is denotational of the seraphic host. As we said before, there was this correspondence between Sabak host, Sepheth, which is a viper, and Seraph, which is a serpent. So this is the seraphic host combined with this proto-human angel of the cherubim, which essentially is Milab. And when you look at the throne chariot, sometimes they often have you'll see legs dangling from them, like small children which have been abducted or taken. And So you're seeing this relationship. Again, theos of God is related to thera, which is to trap or to catch.
Right.
But again, seraph is related to shove, using the morphology between the P and the F and V. Shove, which is a captor. Similarities are also found within, let's say, the lamio, which is to shine in the Aramaic. Lambano in the Greek is to grab hold of or to grasp. Drakon, drasome, which is to take or to grasp. Again, in the Greek, sauros, a lizard, suro, which is to grasp or to take. You've got similarities in the English with dragon and drag off or to pull or to take. So again, all these correspondences are polyglottal symbols, which are denotational, if you like, of theos, a god, thera, which is to trap. But again, the god is equated with the aegis or the shield, hence this correspondence with thurios, which is a shield, which in the Greek mythology, aegis, a shield, would be the angelic vessel, which would be closely concordant with the archons, olkas, which is a vessel. So there are these word relationships and word plays.
Amazing. So listeners, we've got 4 other topics that I really want to just get your high level from. So I'm just going to
go for
about them.
Yeah.
So just back to the grafted and woven / stitched bloodline.
Absolutely.
Are they creating us from their DNA as slaves? Yep. Is that the primary reason they're creating us as workers, slaves?
Exactly. So there is this relationship in the Aramaic between Adam and Kadam, which is a servant. So man is a servant.
Right.
Again, his bloodline has been tweaked. So again, we are compatible sexually with the cherubim and the seraphim.
But what are we slaves for, though? What are we slaves for? Like to do specific work, like to mine minerals? I mean, what is it? I mean, I know it's an opinion question, but what are we specifically a slave for?
I think that's a really good question. Certainly, the seraphim would tax men in the ancient world using sacrifice. And so sacrifice was used as a type of tariff.
For food?
So, well, exactly. So, for example, it's going back to the votive dish.
See, no one wants to talk about this, though, Pierre, because this is the tough conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, we know the pedophiles are stealing children.
Yes.
We know this is a statistical fact. We know that 900,000 children in the Western Hemisphere go missing every single year. Now, they give us fake data to say that the majority of them are found. That's not true.
Yeah.
Because if you interview the families, they say, no, we haven't found our missing child.
Yeah. Well, again, I think it's very interesting. When you look, I can't remember. Do you remember the name of the Russian serial killer?
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember his name?
I don't remember his name, but I'm very familiar with
that. Basically, Russia's most famous, biggest serial killer. He, when you look at the pictures of him, he's wearing shirts which have the Olympic sign on, which have the open wheels. So again, the Russians were basically saying in a codified discourse, and maybe he was a serial killer, who knows, but they were saying at least at some level that some of the people who were going missing was related to the open wheels. Exactly. And so they were putting that out within the media. So we're dealing here with a codified discourse.
Yeah. So, but I mean, again, I know you have no problem saying this, and obviously I have no problem speaking about it, but we know, and you've decoded this in both books, and obviously, especially in The Murder of Reality, that they are sacrificing human beings.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And is it for food? Is it for etheric energy? People talk about loosh. I mean, what do you think it really is for?
Well, I've got some opinions on this.
Of course. It's your opinion.
Right. Okay. My opinion is that, if you like, people who are in positions of power, who are prepared to kill their own kind, we're talking about their own species, is somebody who is can be controlled and manipulated.
Exactly. Right.
And again, I think death psychologically is something which people are afraid of. So it's used as a control mechanism. It's almost like a veiled threat. It's like, this is your tariff. this is what you owe us. You will worship us, as we said before. Sabak, the host, is related to Sabak, which is to glorify or to worship.
Right.
And again, as we said before, the bloodline of the king is related to the alien. So, for example, in the Greek, Caesar is related to Caesar, which is the Hebrew word for a space alien. And again, it's very interesting because
excuse me.
And it's very interesting because Caesar, again, there is this connotation of K or Ka, which is an animal, Elake, which is a living god or a high creature, and Za, which is an angel or an alien. So Caesar, which is this living angel or a living alien, is a space alien. So again, even the Hebrew word for a space alien, Caesar, is related to the old word Za, which is an alien or an angel. The two terms are synonymous. So they're even telling you that within the Judaic and Hebrew, within the Judaic traditions and the Hebrew language. And again, when you're looking at the etymology in the Latin between angelus, which is an angel, you see that there's a relationship between angui, which is a serpent. And again, that this would be connoting the Seraphic tradition of those of the seraphim. So again, this would be the non-human component, which is related to the messenger. And again, Amar, which is the rabbinical root where they trace the word for Malak, an angel, is related to Amara, which is this naval fleet. So again, there is this connotation of Malak, an angel, and Malak, a sailor. These are angelic angels which are identified with Yahweh Sabaoth, the Lord of the host, Sevet, which is a crew of a vessel, Teva, which is an ark. So we're dealing here with the naval tradition, which is the angelic tradition,
right,
of a classified tradition, which is the classical tradition.
Right.
So you cannot understand classical mythology without understanding class is a naval fleet, which is identified with class. One who is born of class is a lordship. One who is born of a boat. Again, going back to the angels. So how can we understand the religious and mythological tradition without the scatological tradition? It's impossible. You can't. But this is a restricted tradition. It's been classified. It's been hidden. It's been concealed.
So when you talk about, amazing, when you talk about the priesthood, because people are going to think religious connotations, who is the priesthood in your idea / definition? Now, obviously my definition of it, if I'm looking in religious areas, is I would look at the Catholic religion, right? I would look at the Vatican. I would look at the dark portions of the Vatican, looking at all the pedophilia in the Catholic priesthood. I would definitely classify that is definitely part of it. But is there any other, veiled religious traditions, like in maybe Islam or in specific sects of Christianity, that you could define as saying
it's everywhere. It's in Buddhism. It's in Buddhism.
So they've essentially infiltrated every faith.
Absolutely. It's encoded in every faith. It's encoded in every language. It's encoded through polyglottal symbolism, which are these parallel thought formations, if you like, which are equated to this universal grammar. So
every government then too, like you call them, the ECG. So every single government on this planet is extraterrestrial controlled.
I would say that they're compromised.
I mean,
I'm not trying to say one government is better than the other.
Of course.
And again, it's very difficult, as we've mentioned before, because I don't want to stereotype the seraphim. I don't think all reptiles or seraphim are all bad. In the same way, I don't think all humans are good. So it's not really good to
But first off, logically, that makes sense, Pierre, because we wouldn't be having this conversation with this advanced technology from England to Southern California if that wasn't the case. So you're right. There clearly is a side of them who want to see us evolve. And we talked about that. And we'll end this podcast when we get there about where we're going. So the site, I did want you to talk a little bit about the cytological tradition.
Cytological, okay. Well, this is representation of angelic vessels. So that, if you like, there's a distinction between the scaphological tradition, which is scaph, which is these empty or hollow vessels within the Greek tradition. But also then you've got what is known as the cytological tradition, which is related in the Greek to koutos, which is a vessel. One of the clear representations of the cytological tradition is the genie within a lamp. Now, if you notice with the genie's lamp, if you look at the Egyptian barks, which is a type of ferry boat or a ship, the ferry boat is shaped as a lamp. So the genie in a lamp is representational of a boat. The boat is equated with a vessel. And this is also important when you're looking at, for example, the Ophnim wheels, because another way of representing the Ophnim wheels is as a barrel. Now, the barrel is a vessel and a vessel is a ship. So you've got to keep this in your mind all the time. A vessel is a type of ship
Right.
or a boat. So the cytological tradition is closely related to the boat or ship. And it's very interesting that certainly within the Hadith, the angels are often described as looking like shining lamps,
Right.
and again shining clouds as well.
Right.
Now,
Right.
again, within the Roman traditions, you have the Nubagina. The Nubagina is an offspring of a cloud, but Nubagina is closely related to Nubes, which is a cloud, Nubia, which is to marry, and Nymph, which is a nymph. So the Nubagina, those who are born of a cloud, are the nymphs, which are equated with extra coitus or marriage. This is going back to the emphatic tradition, or the marital traditions within the mystery cults and religions. So those who are born of a cloud, again, are going back to Awa, which is a jinn, Hawa, which is a cloud, which would relate to Awim, which is a serpent within the Old Semitic. As we said, there was this correspondence between the Elohim, Erin, a watcher or a shining one, who was said to look like vipers, Awim, a serpent. Again, Theos, God, Theros, watcher, Phos, which is light. So the representation of the gods as the watchers is concordant with the Drakon, or Drakane, which is to watch, to see, to flash, to gleam. Again, Yahweh is a pun on the Arabic of Yara, which is to see, because Yahweh, again, is represented as a watcher. The watcher is the dragon, Drakon, Drakane, which is to watch or to shine. In the Semitic self-effort watcher, Seraph, which is a serpent. So the eye is denotational of the dragon.
So do you think Yahweh is the pinnacle? He is the quote unquote figure.
I think that there are
the
different
head figure of the Seraphic hosts, or is it more of just a kind of an analogy, or just a figure?
Well, I think when you look at the old Semitic traditions, and it is very different from the modern religious tradition, relegate more about, but essentially what you're looking at in the old Semitic traditions is that Yahweh is a henotheistic deity. This means that he is the highest deity within a pantheon of other deities or hosts, and therefore he's described as the Lord of the host. So really what you're dealing with is different fractional areas of the Elohim. Some are working together, some are competing against each other. Much in the same way as what humans are. So
exactly.
Exactly.
If you watch that show, that's I forget what it's called now. It just skipped my head, but it's the Battle of the Gods, and they're all that's them telling us like how they're all different, fighting amongst themselves too, right?
And it's kind of interesting. I read a book by an abductee, relatively recent. I can't remember his name now, but it was very interesting. He had a conversation with the aliens, and they described themselves as the host, and he thought, that's a strange or peculiar name. Why would they call themselves the host? But again, the host is going back to host, which is this angelic army, in the Greek stratos, which is an army. But remember, the word host is related to hostia, which is a sacrificial victim. So we're seeing that there is this relationship between Sabak, host, Sabak, which is to offer a sacrifice, Theos, a god, Thusia, which is a sacrifice. Again, the cherubim are related to Carib, which is a boat or a vessel, Karab, which is to offer a sacrifice. Again, the etymology of God is related to Gedwood, which is the host. So God and his angelic host, which is related to Gada, which is to mutilate or to cut. And again, Gada is coming from the etymology to decapitate. So within Islamic symbolism, how do they represent the Lord of the host? They represent this through decapitation. But again, when we're dealing with this, when we're dealing with the symbolism, certainly within the Judaic traditions of Moses talking to God, it says in the book of Exodus that he would talk to God face to face. Now, this is an esoteric signifier, because panim, a face, is related to the etymology of pana, to turn. So the face can turn. Pana is related to the etymology of Ophan, which is a wheel. So when he was talking face to face to God, this is an esoteric signifier of Ophan, which is a wheel. Again, this idea of a psychic wheel is found in the book of Ezekiel, because it is said that the spirits of the angels were inside of the wheels. So we're dealing here with teleological devices in which somehow that the angel is related to the vehicle. Again, we would see this relationship in the Greek between the angelic chariot, which is harmonia, which is to join, amos, which is a chariot, and this idea of being joined. Again, you've got nous the mind, nous, which is a ship, and again, pneuma, which is the spirit. So we're dealing here with the vehicle of the mind. In the same way we would say vehicle of the mind, they had the same conception. So this idea that an angel is somehow conjoined with the vehicle telepathically is an important idea. And certainly the idea that the jinn are telepathic is also found with the Karin, which is this type of jinn, which is related to Kari, which is telepathic. Now, Karin, a jinn, which we would say is a familiar spirit, a companion or a familiar spirit, is related to Kayin, which is an entity, Ayin, which is an eye, which is going back to Erin, which are the watchers or the shining ones who are represented as vipers. Again, Jinn is related to Jana, which is to hide or to conceal. Jen, which is a serpent or a worm, once again, which is the Ruach Elohim, or Awa, which is a Jinn, and Awa, which is the air. The air is a symbol of the Ruach Elohim, the high spirits. So again, all these ideas are circuitous, and they're going around in a circle.
And that's why, it's funny, just to summarize that, that's why Jacques, and you obviously you quote him too, but Jacques Vallée talks about the UFO experience as being hyperdimensional. So you're talking about a telepathic or Ophanum wheel tied together, because you're right. It's not just a physical experience. It's a mental experience.
And this equates with inspiration and the spirit. But again, that these are telepathic beings. How the telepathic states were induced, we can argue that they, again, my suggestion, or I think, is that it's likely technological. It doesn't necessarily have to be technological, but again, I think that we're dealing here with a highly adapted, highly technological species. And again, when we look at the symbolism of the Ophanim wheels, they are described in the book of Jeremiah and Ezekiel as the work of the Lord. So again, this idea that the Ophanim wheels are a type of construction, again, would denote that they are physical. But remember, the Ophanim wheels can dematerialize. So again, we're dealing with this technological device, which is interdimensional, which is denotive of the holographic culture. And this is going back to the Saucer cults. The Saucer cult is the progenitor. They worship these angelic vessels or boats. So therefore, their glyph for Sirius is represented as a votive dish, which is also a symbol of the spinning wheel. The wheel, the Axlan wheel, is the Ophanim from which the Seraphim or the Seraphic host are depicted. Hence, the Ophanim wheel is represented with the eye. So again, the eye is a symbol of the watchers or the shining ones, which are created with the Ophanim wheel.
And the eye is everywhere in our culture. Okay, so we got a couple minutes left.
Yeah,
you've decoded everything, as I've been very open about that. Again, people, if you haven't read his books, pierresabakbooks.com. Would you say definitely to purchase Holographic Culture first now, or if you want to read Murder of Reality?
What I often find is that people buy the Murder of Reality because it's the first book, but I actually think that the Murder of Reality is a really detailed, very difficult book on occult symbolism. And I actually think that with Holographic Culture, it's broken down a little bit more easier, but there's also a glossary in terms of describing the different types of symbolism. So I think Holographic Culture really helps in terms of, if you've got the background from the glossary in terms of the type of symbolism, then it's very useful then for actually reading the Murder of Reality. But again, Holographic Culture is a bigger book than the Murder of Reality. It's nearly 500
They're both phenomenal books. That's all I can say. Okay, so you've decoded everything, but as I always do on my shows, because we're both very positive and uplifting dudes.
Absolutely.
Where do you see this going? So we're on the verge of 2020.
Yep.
We already know that the world is, you and I have talked about this, the world is destabilizing at a very fast rate. We're being attacked in every angle. Our biological systems are under assault.
Yeah.
There clearly is a eugenics promoted idea to reduce population. Are we as human beings going to evolve to our ultimate spiritual beings, or are we going to be recycled? It's an opinion question. What do you think?
I think that this is a very difficult question. I'm optimistic like yourself, and I think that human beings are thriving and will thrive. I'm very optimistic about the human. I believe that we are going to become a holographic culture, and I believe that we will ourselves see different star constellations. I guess the argument is in terms of the angelic war in heaven, because we're dealing here with a holographic culture. Most people believe that this is talking about the ancient past, but it could quite easily be talking about the future. So again, I think that is open to debate in terms of the war in heaven and how this actually plays out. But I'm optimistic for humanity. I think that we have a right to thrive, that we are an immensely intelligent species.
Right.
I think we have a lot to offer the Seraphim, and they've already figured that out. And that's
Right.
because of our creativity and our ingenuity. So again, and I mean, I think now we've got to the stage with the computer, and the computer obviously is coming from this technology which is alien. But again, my attitude on this is that they know humans are ingenious. So their attitude is, okay, we'll give them a bit of tech, see what they do with it. And it's like, oh, yeah, they've done something we haven't thought about.
So that's the one part that you and I haven't spoken. And I promise you on the next podcast, we're going to go deeper on the Seraphic hosts.
Right. Yeah,
because I think it's important that people understand whether or not they are of a vibrational level different than us, because we know they're high technology. But is the, and I don't want to answer this, I don't want you to answer this right here, but I'll just put it out there.
Okay, just put it out.
Are they of a vibrational level not commensurate with us? And are we possibly, and again, I don't want you to answer this, but are we possibly an advanced version of them? Because the proto-human DNA and the Seraphic reptilian DNA actually created a higher, more advanced potential species once this DNA becomes turned on. Right. So it's a question to posit for the next podcast. Okay,
well, I won't talk about that, but I will just talk about the fall of the Anthropos, because with the creation of the Adamic human, which was the tampering, if you like, of the proto-human, this within Greek and Gnostic philosophy was identified with the corruption or the fall of the Anthropos. In the biblical tradition, this is the fall of humanity, through the sexual conjugation.
The biting of the apple in the Garden of Eden, right?
The biting of the apple. Again, the tree is this family tree, which is this grafting of different bloodlines. So the serpent is shown in the tree often, which again has this connotation of this grafted bloodline. So so the fall of the Anthropos. The whole idea is that the corruption of the Anthropos will be restored. So we're dealing here that the humanity and their DNA will somehow be restored to what it was previously. That is the connotation. So again, whether if you like, the aliens are abducting people because they're trying to restore the Anthropos is, I think it's a debate or a discussion which we could have. But again, we've got to be very clear in terms of what we actually know and what is speculation. So again, I have fragments and I have pieces, and I'm still trying to piece this together, and it's an immensely complex area of expertise. And again, we're dealing here with a restricted tradition. So it's not like that you can read a book. And my entry point into this has been through symbolism, in particular studying etymology, the study of words and language. But that is certainly the entry point into discussing and understanding this better. So again, it's a matter of penetrating if you like, the inner mysteries, which are written using this allegoric, this other speaking, which is referring to the others, and is this private discourse. This private discourse, which is known about, but is this restricted or concealed secret. So
Pierre, this has been such a phenomenal podcast. If people want to reach out to you, to work with you, obviously to purchase your books, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Well, again, I've got YouTube, which is I do podcasts, and again, if you leave a comment there, I do pick up most of the comments. So if you want to communicate via YouTube, that would be useful. And again, it's good because then people, if they're, we can share information, and therefore, I'm not writing a million emails. I can write just one email, answer a question, if you like, on the comments section of the YouTube, and that will help other people and again start discussions and debates and discourse, which I think is very important. The other place where you can go is to my website if you're interested in purchasing a book, which is pierresabakbooks.com. And that's basically where I sell my books, Holographic Culture and the Murder of Reality. As I said before, I think that the entry point into scaphology, if you want to understand occult symbolism, is holographic culture. So if I've got viewers there who's thinking, which book do I buy first? Do I buy Murder of Reality because it's the first book? Well, no, I would actually say Go with holographic culture because that will explain the scaphological tradition. It will explain how symbols work very well. Then you can go back to the in-depth book of The Murder of Reality, which is dealing with the serpentagene, the serpent race, and the jinn. So
it is. So Pierre, man, I got to run to this next. I have a meeting I have to jump onto, but man, I have so much love and light for you. This is amazing. You and I will talk. You will talk very soon. But like I said, this is going to come sometime in February. But we'll talk in the next day or so. But if I don't talk to you before Christmas, happy holidays. We will talk very soon.
Seasonal greetings and enjoy your holidays. And thank you very much. And I really look forward to talking to you again. And then again, your guests, or if you have a roundtable.
Oh, no, I'm going to have you on many. But thank you for doing this one-on-one with me today. I'll talk to you really soon. Have a good one.
Take
care.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.